I'm with Mark Tully, a former BBC correspondent, a former BBC bureau chief, not just for India, but all of South Asia. He covered the 1971 India-Pakistan war and, of course, the independence or the birth of Bangladesh, a new nation which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this week. Mark has also been often known as the voice of India. In fact, the Bangladeshi High Commissioner to India, Mr. Mohammad Imran, told me that as a young child in 1971, Mark Tully's voice informed Bangladesh about what was happening in the war between India and Pakistan and all the stories, both brutal and beautiful. Mark Tully, welcome to The Print.
Thank you very much, Jyoti.
So this is a photograph of a very young Mark Tully with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. You can see that they're both under a coconut tree, and Sheikh Mujib, this larger-than-life gentleman who, of course, became Bangladesh's first Prime Minister, now Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Bangladesh. His 100th birth anniversary is also being celebrated, Mujib Borsho. But our story today is about the independence, the 50th anniversary of the independence of Bangladesh. Mark, you were there. You were a witness to what happened. Tell us about it.
Well, I was there part of the time. No one is there all the time. As you know, when all this started, Bangladesh was East Pakistan, the eastern wing of Pakistan. And there's been this anger in the East Wing building up, actually since the partition. The anger was first sparked when Jinnah himself came to Dhaka and said that Urdu would be the language of the East Wing, not Bengali. And that started the language movement, and from there onwards there was movement demanding autonomy and even independence at some stages. The movement in its latter stages was led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. I used to call him Sheikh Saab. Others, of course, call him Bangabandhu, father of the nation. He was a great, great orator. And that picture which you've just seen was a picture of Sheikh Saab and I walking down to one of his great rallies. And that picture was taken after the defeat of the Pakistan army, and Sheikh Saab had returned to Dhaka from his imprisonment in West Pakistan. And I still recall in my mind that wonderful, great booming voice, because as you said, Sheikh Saab was in every sense larger than life, and his voice was one of those senses, definitely. Right. And that great booming voice shouting, coming out saying, Omar Shona Bangla, our golden Bengal. But during the actual war, I was mainly in London. But what happened was that when the crackdown took place by the Pakistan army, that crackdown followed some 25 days when Sheikh Saab's Army League followers were in control of Dhaka. And the Pakistan army was confined to the cantonment. Then came March 1971, and the president of Pakistan, Yahya Khan, came to try and break the backlog.
Break the back.
Trying to get a breakthrough in the negotiations between Mujib from the East Wing, who wanted virtual autonomy, and from Bhutto, who was then the leader of the West Wing, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and he wanted a strong centrist government, and he did not want Bangladesh, the East Wing, to enjoy the advantages of being the majority, because there were much larger population. And after about 10 days of negotiations, it was clear to Yahya, the president, that he wasn't going to achieve a breakthrough, and so he left. And the night he left, the army found out from the cantonment and attacked the university, police line.
In Dhaka, this is in Dhaka.
In Dhaka.
So the Pakistani army and the soldiers sort of came out of the cantonment and began to...
Yes, came down the cantonment and killed a lot of people, committed what later was regarded as atrocities, particularly in three areas: the university, the police lines, and the Hindu areas of the old city. Right. The army came out and committed these atrocities.
So the Dhaka University, the police lines, and the old areas where a large Hindu population lived.
That's right. Okay. Yes, yes. No one might have known about this because all the foreign correspondents were rounded up, or they thought they'd rounded them all up, and thrown out of the country. At the same time, the Bangladesh press, of course, was silenced. Right. They didn't want to be silent, but they were silenced. But one chap called Simon Dring, working for the Telegraph.
What was his name again? Simon?
Simon Dring.
Okay.
Working from the for the Daily Telegraph in London. He hid when the army came searching for him with the help of the Bengali staff. And then a couple of days later, he got out in as much disguise as he could, and he went and saw the three places I'd mentioned to you. He somehow managed to get out of East Pakistan with great luck, as he himself said, with a considerable measure of good luck, and with some kind person giving him authority to leave the country, right, so that he could get on a PAIA flight. And then he published a graphic account of what had happened.
Those days?
Yeah.
So when did you go to Dhaka first?
Well, what happened was, I need to explain a bit more, then I'll tell you that. Because what then happened was, of course, that we knew that what had happened in Dhaka. But we were starting to get stories from our stringers and from other sources we had in Dhaka.
This is the BBC?
I was in the talks department of the Eastern Service where I worked, which was writing what we call talks or commentaries on the situation in East Pakistan from London. We're starting to get some reports of dreadful things happening in the countryside and in other cities, but we didn't know much about this. Then the Pakistan army collected together a lot of West Pakistani journalists and told them to come to Bangladesh and write stories saying everything was absolutely normal there, and the army was in complete control of the country. So they wrote these stories, but unfortunately for the army, one of them, called Mascarenhas, who was actually of Goan origin, but a Karachi journalist, he went back to London, spoke to Harold Evans, who was the famous editor of the Times, of the Sunday Times, spoke to Harold Evans, who was absolutely, bowled over by the stories he told. And then after, with great difficulty, getting his wife and family out of Pakistan, he published his report. And this, of course, was an absolutely a bombshell and completely destroyed the Pakistan Army's case, really. So the next thing which happened was the Pakistan Army thought, well, what we had better do is we had better get some reputable Western journalists and say to them, okay, right, you can come here, you can go wherever you like, you can say what you like, there is no censorship. Well, then we rely on you to do reliable reporting. Why did they do this? I don't know exactly.
What months were these? When Western journalists first went
June,
in?
I can't remember the exact month. One of my troubles is that I was not a very good keeper of diaries, and I have no record of my dispatches because they're all with the BBC. But it must have been about May, I think, by now. And they said we could come. I think one of the reasons they wanted us to come, because they wanted us at least to tell the story of terrible massacres which had also taken place by mutineers from the East Bengal Regiment and the East Pakistan Police, Bengali mutineers who had committed dreadful atrocities against non-Bengalis living in Bangladesh. So they wanted that side of the story to come out as well, because it hadn't really come out. And I was the good fortune to be one of those journalists. Right. So we were the first people to be allowed to go in there, report freely, and they were as good as their word.
The Pakistan Army?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then when the war took place in 1971, December, you were in London at the time.
I was in London, yes, yeah. What happened was we reported the situation as we found it. We reported that quite clearly the Pakistan Army had fanned out from its cantonments and other places where it was holed up during the start of the war, in effect, between Bangladeshis and Pakistan Army, and just burnt villages as they came to them. It was like sort of sweeping, lighting a fire, which swept through whole areas that the Pakistan Army passed through as they tried to re-establish their control over the whole country. It was a horrific sight. This is what we saw, yes. And we saw the damage which had been done in West Bengal, in Dhaka as well. We didn't manage to talk to many people because when we went outside Dhaka, the whole place seemed to be empty. Even small towns had their bazaars burnt down, and the most appalling brutality and callousness of the Pakistan Army was what particularly struck us. And I was there with a very legendary war correspondent. You probably heard of her, Claire Hollingworth. Well, Claire was there with me and with the others, and Claire was absolutely appalled by what she'd seen. And of course, she'd covered wars all around the world.
So this was post the war?
This was post the crackdown, yeah.
Okay.
Not post the war.
Oh, this is post the crackdown when a group of you were allowed in by the Pakistani Army.
Yes, yes, that's right, yes. Okay. This was post crackdown. And we also interviewed people called Biharis,
yes, of course,
who were the people who had come from India into Bangladesh and at time of partition, yeah, and were not Bengalis, and they had horrific stories to tell. It was also obvious that we learned that the Pakistan Army Bengalis, the East Bengal Regiment basically, who had mutinied, had put up very strong fights, particularly in Chittagong, for instance. And so the whole crackdown really had, instead of being a snap operation which perhaps a mixture of brutality and creating fear would silence the people of Bengal. It's actually the beginning of the uprising against the Pakistan Army.
So the Pakistani Army, which allowed you into East Pakistan at the time, so in a sense, that backfired on the Pakistan Army because they thought you would come out with sort of positive reports, positive stories, but that wasn't the case.
No, it did back down. The only thing that can be said, of course, is that we did report the other side of the story. We reported the massacre, the brutalities committed by the Bengalis on the Biharis, the Bengali soldiers. So that side of the story did get reported. And we also told revived memories of the background and of how this had happened, and how the army had in fact been facing the prospect of virtually having to leave East Pakistan if they hadn't taken action. So we told those stories as well.
So the Pakistan army was burning and rampaging and pillaging across the villages of then East Pakistan. Not much pillaging.
Villages were too small, too poor. They're mainly just coming along, setting them on fire, searching for anyone who might be there, possibly shooting anyone they saw, looking for militants, as they call them, or insurgents, as they call them. That was what we reported, you know. So there wasn't much to pillage in those days.
And you also reported the story of the Bengali soldiers and their horrific treatment of the Biharis, as it were. Yes. People from Bihar, from India, who went to Pakistan, in East Pakistan in 1947. Yes. But what about the Mukti Bahini at the time? That must have been...
Well, the Mukti Bahini had started their actions. I was able, through our stringers, to meet the local Mukti Bahini man in charge of the Mukti Bahini in Dhaka itself. And he told me that they had recently blown up an electricity transmission unit, a transformer unit, and a bridge. And I was able to go and see the bridge had been damaged and report that. So yes, they were starting. And of course, the other thing the army wanted us to report was the Mukti Bahini, because they were claiming that the Mukti Bahini was Indian-trained, Indian-sponsored, and all the rest of it.
So it was. Was it? What did you find? Did you find that they were India-trained and India?
When I talked to, you know, obviously it was very difficult to find these people. They weren't going to come forward and say we. But the one I did speak to, of course, he denied this. He said, we live in Bangladesh. But he did say we go across the border for sometimes when we need refuge, when we're being chased by the army, you know. But this was the beginning of the whole thing, really, still, you know. But that was the other angle that the Pakistani army wanted. They wanted to convey the fact that, in effect, India was declaring war on Pakistan. And I can't, to be honest, remember to what extent we discovered that was true or not at that stage.
Well, subsequently, of course, it has come out that India was involved with the Mukti Bahini, but it's also true that, not also true, but it is primarily true that it was the Bangladeshis or the East Pakistanis at that time who sort of revolted against the government.
The insurgency started with the revolt of the Pakistan army, Bangladesh, Bengali regiments, the East Bengal regiment battalions, and also with the police as well, who mutinied and ran away.
Were there many women on the streets in Dhaka, or was it just this ghost town?
In my memory, there were very few people on the streets. People were frightened still. I don't remember particularly seeing women. And in the countryside, it was as though there was no one there at all, basically. And we were never able to make out where they'd all gone, to be honest, you know. I was told by my main source of income, information was our two stringers we had there. Right. One was called Atal Samad, who worked mainly for the Bengali service, and one was called Nizamuddin, funnily enough, which is the same as where we're doing this interview.
That's right.
And where I happen to live. Yeah. But of course I had to be very careful about using any information they give, because the army would have been on him. in no time if they'd thought that, they were informing us. And in the end, much further down the line, sadly, Nizamuddin was killed, and he was killed by people called Razakas. And the Razakas were people of non-Bengali origin living in Bangladesh who had been recruited by the army to do whatever harm they could to Bengalis, and particularly to the Bengali elite. And there was a famous massacre of intellectuals in which sadly Nizamuddin lost his life.
So you have a book with you, Mark. What's that about?
Well, this book is about one of my...
Do you want to show us the cover of the book?
Yes, certainly. This book is...
Witness to Surrender, by Siddiq Salik.
Yes, and Siddiq Salik was an army PRO. At the time he was Major Salik, and he was in charge of the Pakistan Army's public relations.
This is in 1971.
Yes, and as you will, if you ever read this book, and I strongly recommend you, if you're interested in this subject, to read it. He was in the headquarters all the time. There's all sorts of details about how the army worked and what happened when they found out, how the brutality of their attacks on the villages and that sort of thing. And it's a very frank book and very critical of the army. The extraordinary thing about it is that Salik, well, two extraordinary things. Although, of course, Salik didn't like what I was doing, didn't like the BBC or anything like that, he wrote this book. He was not sacked from the army. I don't know why. He then went on to be President Zia-ul-Haq's PRO, and was killed with Zia when Zia's aeroplane exploded.
In 1988.
Yeah, and during all those years, from Dhaka right up to the death of Zia, I was in a way working with Saleh. And I remember one particular occasion when we had a real ding-dong battle, because I got information that Bhutto was going to be hanged the next day. His trial was over and everything. And I put out the story. And I got a phone call from Salik, and he was really angry. And he said, this story is rubbish, it's completely untrue. Yes. So I said to him, Salik Saab, I'm very happy to put out your denial in your name. And he said, you can't put my name there. And I said, Salik Saab, I can't say I heard it in the sky or something like that. I have to put your name. And in the end, after a lot of battling, I just put the phone down. And it is an awful thing to say, terrible thing to say, but I have to admit to you that the next morning, when I got up very early and went down to the jail, it was dark, and we'd been told that under the law of Pakistan, Bhutto, nobody should be hanged in the dark. They had to be hanged in daylight. And we went down, the party of us, early on, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we met a policeman who was patrolling outside the jail. And we said to him, has anything happened here? And he just said, something dreadful has happened here, and walked off. So we knew that Bhutto had been hanged.
So this is Rawalpindi,
Yes.
1979, April 4th.
Yes. And as I said to you, I have to admit that there was I felt something of a sense of relief, because I would have really been in trouble if they had changed their minds or something like that. Right. So that was Salik and I in a relationship. Yeah. And it was really a love-hate relationship, because we had a great deal of friendship between each other as well. And I really admire Salik for writing this book, because he put his whole career at risk, risked the wrath and anger of all his colleagues in the army, the anger of the loyal Pakistanis and all the rest of it. But if you just listen to this, you will realize the honesty with which he told this story. He tells the story of meeting an officer after a clearing operation. And this was a clearing operation which took place because he had been given some information. The information was not properly checked, so a clearing operation took place. And when the clearing operation, Salik said, when he came back, he said, in the evening, I met the officer who carried out the attack, and what he said was enough to chill my blood. He confided there were no rebels and no weapons, only poor country folk, mostly women and old men, got roasted in the barrage of fire. It is a pity that the operation was launched without proper intelligence. I will carry this burden on my conscience for the rest of my life. So that's a Salik's book. And he was a remarkable man.
So Pakistani army man with a conscience.
Yes, yeah.
So he was witness to the massacres across Bangladesh or then East Pakistan, and he wrote about them so that the world would know that this is what had happened. But he continued to serve the same Pakistan army.
Yes, and he started writing in 76, and the book was published in 77. He was a remarkable guy, and I was really sad when I heard that he had died.
Right. So now, Mark, let's come to the 1971 war.
Yeah.
You were in London at the time. You said you weren't obviously on the field in Bangladesh or in East Pakistan. Were there any foreign correspondents there?
As far as I remember, Jyoti, and I wouldn't guarantee this, no. I mean, the vast majority, well, of course, there were people who went in with the Indian Army, you know. But as far as I know, there were no foreign correspondents with the Pakistan Army. But I may be wrong there. I should know because my job was really to collect all the reports which were coming in and building them into what we called a talk or a commentary to be broadcast on the BBC World Service.
So then when you went in, this is after the war has been won by India and a new state or a new country called Bangladesh has been created. I remember the big concert for Bangladesh. And of course that was in the West in London and Janis Joplin and all these wonderful singers. But then you went back to Dhaka. And tell us what you saw.
Well, I went back to Dhaka and of course the place was absolutely, well, the streets were flooded, there were people everywhere, there were celebrations everywhere. And Sheikh Mujib had just got back when I arrived there. Of course he was ecstatic, and I approached his PRO and he said could I have an interview with him? And he said, you have an interview with him? He wants you to go and interview him.
So this is when you met Sheikh Mujibur Rahman?
When I met him, there we were going down to one of his rallies together. You see,
You're really handsome here, Mark.
Yes, I don't.
With a shirt and tie in the heat of Bangladesh.
Well, it was the winter.
Yes, it was.
Certainly more formally dressed than I am today. And my apologies to you for not dressing more formally.
No. We're all journalists.
Sheikh Mujib, of course, and lots of people in Bangladesh, the only source of information they'd been getting really was the BBC Bengali and English language services. And as it happened, of course, as the person who was collecting information each day and writing that up, my name was broadcast almost every day. So I was a hugely familiar figure to them.
That's right.
And I remember my interview with Sheikh Saab. He kept on thanking me for all that I had done for Bangladesh. And of course, as you know, as a journalist, I had to keep on saying to the Sheikh Saab, we were only doing our job. We were only reporting the news. I haven't done anything for Bangladesh particularly. In the end, he said words to the effect of, we all think you have done a lot for Bangladesh, and I want to present you with a token of this. So I said, Sheikh Saab, I'm not allowed to accept a presents. So he said, well, you are going to accept this picture. And it's a picture of a river scene in Bangladesh, a lovely picture. And then the argument went on about this with me saying, no, I can't accept it. And he's saying, yes, you can, you accept it, tell him it's for me. You know, in the end, I said to him, well, I've got an idea, Sheikh Saab. Back in Delhi, I have a BBC office, and it's right above the flat where I live.
Right.
And so I will put the picture there, and I will tell my seniors, the officials on top of me, that this is the property of the BBC office, not mine.
So then you were in the new Bangladesh.
Yes.
What is your dominant memory of the time?
My dominant memory was of meeting Sheikh Saab, actually, and of the sheer pleasure of it.
Do you remember Hasina, the two girls, Hasina and Rehana?
No. And of course, doing lots of quite a lot of reporting, finding out what happens, filling in gaps, meeting our stringer, all that sort of thing as well, you know.
Right.
But we weren't.
So you went in with the Indian Army after the surrender of Dhaka?
No. I flew to Dhaka.
Okay.
No. I can't remember how I flew, but I flew there, you know.
So when you went into Bangladesh after the surrender of Dhaka, did you meet the Indian generals who were part of the surrender at the time?
To be honest, I don't remember. My whole memory is clouded by the memory of meeting Sheikh Saab, his affection, and
so he was this larger-than-life character.
And he's huge.
Who filled up a room, I guess.
Yes.
And the country.
And I kept in touch with Sheikh Saab. Whenever I went to Bangladesh, he would give me an interview. And I remember with sadness the interview I did with him after he'd announced the constitutional changes. And you know the way as journalists you do sometimes presume to give advice to people, which I suppose one ought not to do.
Absolutely.
But I was giving him advice and telling him that it's wrong that you've done, you will regret this in the end, and think back to all the affection and popularity you had then. So I kept in touch with him as well.
So in 1975, when he was assassinated,
yes.
You were in Delhi at the time.
No, I was in London. I was in London because that was emergency.
That's right.
And if you remember rightly, I had been expelled from India.
Absolutely. The emergency was imposed in June 1975, and this was on the 15th of August, yes. A couple of months later when he was assassinated. Yes. So you were in London. Did you go to Bangladesh at the time?
No, I didn't, no, because there were other people in the area, you see, by then. There was a correspondent who was responsible, a chap called Brian Barron was responsible for Bangladesh. So I did my old job, really, I wrote commentaries about it based on my past knowledge and on the information which we were getting, you know.
So 50 years on, Mark, it's been 50 years and long journey, a very young country. But I have my question to you is that Pakistan and Bangladesh still have a very bitter relationship. I mean, the Pakistanis don't even want to talk about what happened in 1971. I mean, perhaps they should all read Siddiq Saleh's book. But why do you think that the Pakistanis are refusing to come to terms with it?
Well, I think it's understandable. I mean, what would you think as an Indian if, for instance, Kashmir was taken off you? You know, half the country was lost. The whole concept of a Muslim homeland for the Muslims of the subcontinent was undermined. It was shown that Islam alone is not enough to hold the country together. It was an utter humiliation for the Pakistan army. And the Pakistan army is such an integral part of Pakistan. Imagine what the Indian army would feel like if they had, I don't remember how many, but a vast number of soldiers, including very senior officers, taken prisoners of war. What would you feel? That's a huge scar to be left on a nation, isn't it? And I think, for what it's worth, I think that what happened in East Pakistan, in a sense, puts a burden of generosity on India. I think India should at least, and Indians should understand the terrible disaster it was to Pakistan. And therefore, I just wish that India could find a way of bearing this burden of generosity, and the relationship between India and Pakistan could at last improve on a stable basis. And if that happens, as I just said, then relations between Pakistan and Bangladesh would also, I'm sure, as a follow-on. And this whole South Asia, which really is far more backward than it need to be, the whole of it would radically improve for the better, because around the world it has been shown that the value of regional trade has been shown.
So let's go back to 1972, and I want to take you to Shimla when the agreement was signed between Indira Gandhi and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Now, the same Bhutto who's hanging you, of course, the story of which you broke. But in 1972 in Shimla, don't you think that India bore the burden of generosity at the time and returned 93,000 prisoners of war to Pakistan?
I think India was in a dilemma. I don't think they knew what to do with them. What would you do with all those prisoners of war, you know? The whole course of the Shimla summit, the ending of it, you remember, with Bhutto saying it's all over, and then last minute Indira changing her mind, and the agreement for the soldiers to go back. Indira also knew that if she held on to the soldiers, it would be the end of Bhutto probably in Pakistan. And she feared that that would mean the return of the army in some form in Pakistan. It wasn't a straightforward act of generosity. There was a very strong convenience element in it as well.
Were you in Shimla?
Yes, I was. Yes, yeah. And I remember vividly filing the story saying Bhutto says it's all over, and then being summoned to go back and be told that they'd signed an agreement, and late at night filing the story that there had been an agreement.
So Bhutto did stand up to Indira.
Oh yes, definitely, yes.
And he was, his country had lost the war. The country had been broken up into two, but he had the courage, or the machismo, if you like. He stood up to this woman.
Yes, but in a way also there's an element of desperation in it, of course, because as I said, if he went back with nothing done for the prisoners of war, about the prisoners of war, or if he'd gone back with a more major concession on Kashmir, where would he have been, He'd have been finished. So it was like that. I don't want to give the impression that there was no what was achieved was a compromise. And I think, I firmly believe, and I've often said that compromises are often very valuable things. They're thought of as being a very bad thing, of being cowardly or that something like that. But very often, and Mahatma Gandhi said this, it is a compromise which is really the answer. And I think there have been other stages in the India and Pakistan relationship where with more generosity, I think Siachen...
So Indira Gandhi did compromise
Yes.
with the country that she went to war with and defeated, but compromised and said, okay, let's take, you should take back your people and let's start again.
Yes.
Did you meet Indira?
Yeah, I can't remember what I did on that occasion. It would only have been a press conference if I did. I saw Bhutta at a press conference, definitely, I remember, but I don't remember when I saw Indira on that.
So what was the image at the time of Indira Gandhi? In India, of course, she was sort of known as Durga, Atal Bihari Vajpayee's famous description of her.
Yes.
But as a foreign correspondent, or then as as a BBC correspondent?
Well, I certainly thought she was a very tough woman. I thought she had handled the whole crisis leading up very well. I thought her decision not to rush in was a very wise decision. I thought that she would now be in a very strong position to do things which needed to be done in India, which she was now undoubted, undisputed leader of India.
Yeah. And so last couple of questions, Mark. If you look at Bangladesh today, Sheikh Hasina, the daughter of your good friend Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, is running the country, very strong, very powerful woman.
Yeah.
She's come back with a huge majority.
Yes.
What do you make of Bangladesh today? What are your thoughts?
Well, having seen the state of Bangladesh when Kissinger famously described it as a basket case, having been out in Bangladesh after the end of the war, seen the bridges destroyed, the power pylons destroyed, seeing the roads in an appalling condition, seeing the famine which broke out in Bangladesh as well, seeing how that famine spread into West Bengal, seeing people literally dying on the streets of West Bengal as well as Bangladesh in the rural areas. I am absolutely delighted that Bangladesh is now making such economic progress.
Right.
I'm delighted that its index of human development figures are mounting. I'm delighted that there seems to be stability. But I was invited to go there for the celebrations, but because of COVID, I decided
It's stay at home. But your message was read out, I know, at the parade ground, at the inaugural. But, you speak about Kissinger, who infamously called Bangladesh a basket case. And in fact, when thousands or lakhs of Bangladeshi refugees or East Pakistanis were flooding West Bengal or coming into India at the time, and Indira Gandhi was so upset or angry with Nixon and with Kissinger at the time. What are your memories of that?
Well, I remember her as being extremely hostile to America. And of course, I remember her signing the Treaty of Friendship with Russia. And it was a very clever international movement. And many people believe that's what held the 7th Fleet back, which was, as you know, moved into basically the area. I think that poisoned Indian and American relationships for a long time.
In a story that I wrote, of course, many years later, was about K. Subramaniam, the father of the current External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar, who met Kissinger at the time and reminded Kissinger that he should, of all people, understand what happened in 1971 as all these millions of refugees were streaming into India because of his own memory of the Holocaust in Germany. And I think this sort of tilt towards Pakistan that the US had was, and I'm not sure Kissinger liked that very much, but this story was told to me by Mr. Subramaniam himself.
But this is also American policy. Yes. The only thing which saddens me about Bangladesh today is that the reports I get of an oppressive policy towards the media. And I don't think a woman as powerful and as competent and as politically stable as Sheikh Hasina needs to be oppressive about the press. I think that's a great pity.
So, well, we hope that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is listening to what you say and has watched this interview. But Sir Mark Tully, thank you so much for your time, for speaking to ThePrint. And like I said at the beginning of this interview, you were known as the voice of India, but perhaps you were also the voice of South Asia. And I'm going to leave my viewers with this amazing picture again of Mark with Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Thank you so much, Mark, for this.
Thank you for being interested in something that's happened a long time ago.